Grew up northwest of Fulda, born and raised Murray County. I am the 14th out of 15 children in my family.
Well, there's a story right there.
Right, so never a dull moment when we were growing up. My mom and dad always said we had enough boys to have our own baseball team. So graduated from Fulda High School. That's where I ended up meeting my wife, Pam. She was a classmate, so we've been high school sweethearts. Started dating her between 10th and 11th grade. Then I went to Wilmer Community College for the 2-year law enforcement degree there, and then on to skills training. Back then, not all the colleges offered full programs, so you had to do some at both. Then graduated from Alexandria Tech with skills training. That was in August of 1990. And back in those days, the law enforcement market was very flooded. So I applied for over 130 law enforcement jobs and interviewed for 30-something before I even got an offer.
Oh my gosh.
So then first job took me to Appleton, Minnesota.
Okay,
Which
sure.
is up by Benson, Montevideo, up in that area. My wife and I started in Appleton, Minnesota in June of '91, and my wife and I got married in August of '91, so we ended up working there for 8 years.
Were you in with the sheriff or
No,
with
I was
PD?
police department, 3-man police department up there.
Okay.
So worked there for 8 years, then had the opportunity to, my wife and I are both from this area, our family's all from this area, so in '99 we had the opportunity to come back here, and then '99 to 2024 I was Nobles County deputy.
So tell me about your career as a deputy sheriff in that time.
Started out where I just got hired as deputy sheriff, was just patrol deputy, worked nights, patrolling the whole county. And then I suppose I had been with the sheriff's department maybe a year and a half, 2 years, and got asked to be the DARE officer. So I went to the training for that. So I was the DARE officer for like 10 years, and was fortunate enough that I got to teach both of my children DARE, so that was kind of fun. So, and actually, if you talk to a lot of the Worthington police officers and some of the sheriff's deputies, I taught them DARE. And then I ended up working with them,
Right.
several years later. So
that's what happens when you stay in a job for a while.
when you get old. So I worked road, then I was days for a while, was investigator for a 3-year stint, did court security for 5 years. Throughout the course of doing that, I volunteer firearm safety instructor, ATV safety instructor, snowmobile safety instructor. I was on the Brewster Fire Department. I'm Worthington Ambulance, so I was one that always was very active and tried to keep busy.
So DARE, I'm sure, was a rewarding thing. Talk about some of the rewarding things about being a sheriff deputy.
I've always been one of those, anybody that knows me like to talk. I've always been a very PR orientated, so when I worked in Appleton, it's just a town very similar to Adrian, 1,500 people, and I worked night shift, so basically 10, 11 o'clock at night, they turned off the lights and rolled up the sidewalks. So you didn't have quite as much opportunity to interact with people. Then when I came down here, you got these 13 little small communities that are scattered all over Nobles County, so I really enjoyed getting to know, the business owners and the council members and the different community leaders in all of those small towns, and then just being involved in, their different parades and different community events and whatnot, and establishing relationships and helping people out. I found that very rewarding.
Challenges in the job.
A lot of interesting stuff we deal with. I've always said the ones, domestic assaults, and then suicides. I told somebody when I went into law enforcement, I would have never imagined that there is the number of people that take their own lives, even in these rural areas. I said, and a lot of the people don't realize it because you'll just see where it's somebody that died younger than normal, died at home. It doesn't go into any more detail.
Right.
And like I said, probably throughout my career, it's probably one a month, and you would not guess that, but it's just, I said, we all have bad days. I just can't imagine having one of those, but that's one of those things. Every suicide has to be investigated. An officer has to go there. You have to make sure it is what it appears to be, and figure out what happened, and then, you know, fatal car crashes, and, you know, and just coroner calls in general. There's a lot more of that than I would have expected when, and of course, you know, they don't really talk about that. You know, everybody wants to hear about the bar fights and the high-speed chases and, you know, all that type of stuff, but you'll see way more fatalities, so.
And that has to be difficult.
Oh, yeah.
How did you handle that?
I became back in let's see, I got to back up, wind the clock back. When I was in Wilmer, after I graduated and was looking for my first law enforcement job, I got on the Wilmer ambulance service. I took the EMT class as an elective in college, and I still keep my EMT certification to this day. And then Wilmer was looking, so I got the Wilmer ambulance service. And I was on there for about a year. Well, it was in January of, I believe, '91. There was a fatal house fire in Wilmer, and 2 young Hispanic children burned to death in that house. And I was on call that day. And they ended up doing what's called a critical incident stress debriefing. It's geared towards EMS, fire, law enforcement, and ambulance, and they debriefed that. And I was one of the people that responded that was debriefed, and I was so impressed with how that debriefing process went that the following year I went to the training and got trained to do it. And I have been a critical incident stress debriefer for the 13 counties in southwest Minnesota since '92.
So you help other law enforcement people deal with some of the things that they've had to see.
Right.
And how they handle that. Because I imagine bringing that into your, you know, you go home and that stays with you.
No, it's like I always tell, trauma is one of those things, you know, that you know, I think each different officer finds their own way on how they compartmentalize it. Because I mean, obviously, if it totally shuts you down, you know, it doesn't always happen at the end of your shift. You mean, you still might have to deal, you know, you got to be able to function. But yeah, when you go home and peel off the uniform, that doesn't all go away. So, and that's what that whole debriefing process, I still, like I said, we fire, ambulance, EMS, you know, and each agency can request a debriefing based on what it doesn't necessarily, just because I don't think they needed it doesn't mean they didn't need it.
Right, right.
So
you'll stay involved then?
Oh, absolutely. No, all the team leader for that, she's from Dawson, Minnesota. She says you cannot retire, because what they try to do on these debriefings, if they have fire, law enforcement, and ambulance there, they try to get a debriefer from each one of those disciplines. Well, with me, she's got all 3 in one guy.
Right, right.
So yeah, I've been as far away as Litchfield, Wilmer, Glencoe, just because there's not a lot of law enforcement in the debriefing field. It's getting better every year, so.
So you'll be retired from the Sheriff's Department, but you'll still be involved.
Yeah, I just plan on, I haven't decided if I'm going to retire from the ambulance service yet, but I'm going to keep my EMT certification just because you use that all the time. Yeah.
Well, tell me more. You're going to stay involved in the EMT piece of it. What else are you going to do with your retirement?
Back in December, I went and got my Class A CDL. I've drove trucks since '93, and I worked up in Appleton. I got to know a family up there, and they raised sugar beets. And then they found out I was born and raised on a grain and dairy and livestock farm and knew how to operate equipment. And so they said, you'd be willing to help us farm in the spring and fall. So I hauled sugar beets for the 6 of the 8 years we were up there. And then when I came back here, my brothers have semis, and I drove truck for them. So my nephew also just has a small 2-truck trucking operation. He's on a side dump and then a hopper bottom, and he asked me if I'd be willing to drive truck for him, so I went and got my Class A CDL. So I'm going to do some trucking on the side, just local short haul stuff where I'd be home every day.
And I'm sure that's nice to be home every night, and because that's probably a challenge of being in law enforcement. What advice would you give to somebody that's looking into a career in law enforcement as you're getting out of yours?
Well, it's been a very good career to me. You know, if it was somebody that's fresh, right in school, is, you know, don't be caught off guard by what you see on TV. It's not like TV, you know. Go get involved, talk to the people that are actually in the jurisdiction you're going to work with, and get, you know, what it, you know, because I think, and I'm not saying that these schools aren't doing a good job, they aren't telling them that, but I don't think they necessarily tell all of these young cadets coming out of this program everything that they need to know. So, you know, make sure that you are fully aware of everything that's involved. And I think the other thing is a lot of the next generation, nights, weekends, and holidays. Who wants to do that? And that's what I've done for the last 33 years. So you know, you said that, you know, my wife and I are looking forward to both being home at the same time. We got a seasonal campsite for the first time ever, because guess who doesn't have to work any weekends anymore?
Lovely.
So yeah, no, I would tell these young people, go talk to the agencies or find somebody that you know that's in the field.
Right.
You know, whether it's, you know, a friend or relative, you know, because usually there's somebody that steered them in that direction. And, you know, sit down and talk to them and have a real heart-to-heart conversation about the good, the bad, the ugly, you know, because it's got all of those involved. So.
Well, thank you for sitting down with us, Jay, and thank you for your service to Nobles County.
Nope, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, but I'm also very much so looking forward to the next chapter.